Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 7 of Shoot Style Sessions here on the Ethos Media Network. We told y'all that Steve would be back. We weren't lying. Steve's back. What up, man?
I'm back, motherfuckers. Let's go. I'm ready to catch up on a lot of important shit going on in the world of our love called professional wrestling. And I missed you guys a lot. Was not on purpose or by design, but I'm definitely glad to be back and shoot the shit with you guys about pro wrestling.
That's right. Eric, how you feeling, bro?
I'm good, man. Glad to have my boy back. Let's dive into some shit. A lot of good and a lot of bad kind of happened this week.
Yeah. So we're heading into WrestleMania season. You know, it's April 6th as of the date of recording this. And where I'll start off is Kevin Owens, man. That hurts.
And that's what I brought up. That's what I mean
dealing with the neck injury, and it's going to require surgery. So he is probably going to be out. Probably my guess would be for the rest of the year. Neck surgery, that's usually pretty serious. So what do you guys think is going to happen with Randy now going forward?
Obviously before I even talk about Randy, I'm super gutted about the KO thing just because KO's always been one of my favorite guys, and I feel like he was really like getting on a cusp of getting in some really high caliber and important singles matches like going into this year, and obviously the Mania one was going to be huge. So I'm just really upset about him like not being able to be there, and then also the amount of time that he might have to miss. So I just really hope Kevin Owens gets well soon. But as far as Randy goes, man, it's hard to say because it's WrestleMania is so soon. So they kind of need to do something quick if they are going to have him on the card.
It's in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. And I've heard 2 pitches that on paper make sense, even though they're rushed pitches. I wouldn't be necessarily mad. The first pitch that I heard is to kind of have him get involved with the Cody stuff a little bit. I mean, it does kind of make sense, especially if The Rock and Cena do make some surprise appearances. Like Cody is going to need some type of backup. So I think Randy being involved with that somehow would be a nice little flip. Or the other pitch that I've heard is him having a straight one-on-one match against Nick Aldis, because this is now time number 2 that he's RKO'd him. So the Aldis one, I think that would be nice just because people wouldn't expect Nick Aldis to step back into the ring after he's taken so much time off after coming back to WWE from the NWA. So I think that would be a nice surprise for people. But I mean, it's Randy Orton, man. I would still have him on the card in some capacity.
Yeah.
What do you think, Steve?
I completely agree. I completely agree with Eric on this last point that, Randy Orton's too talented to be left off WrestleMania card, especially with how he looks now. Obviously, thoughts and prayers go out to Kevin Owens and his family. That's just rough. I think we were all looking forward to that program. It had a lot of great story in there. There was heat. Kevin's been on a tear lately, and obviously, Randy has too. So we were all looking forward to that. But health comes first. I was completely taken aback by it. I wish Kevin, all the best in his recovery, and hopefully looking forward to seeing him back here in the future, whenever that may be. But on the topic of Randy, Eric tossed out the possibility of Aldis. I wouldn't be opposed to that. I'd love to see Aldis versus Orton in the ring. Aldis can go. He doesn't, it doesn't need to turn him into a full-time guy. Obviously, he's a SmackDown general manager, but it would make for a great match. It's kind of like a desperate measure right now because you can't leave Randy Orton off the card. So whatever direction they want to go in, post-Mania is fine. And I'm sure, WWE has already fleshed out those plans, regarding Randy, regardless of Kevin's health. But I think I'd probably be leaning towards Aldis. There's kind of already the beginning of a story there. They go back, it's not necessarily long-term storytelling, but there's already an established story there. And assuming all this is clear to go, I wouldn't mind at all seeing them kind of ramp this thing up over the next 2 weeks and putting out a really good match at Mania, because they're both excellent workers.
Yeah. I'm pretty much on the same wavelength. Like I assume as long as Nick Aldis is healthy, then it'll probably be him. And then it's an easy way to still have Randy on the card, because it's not going to be a long match. You know what I mean? They'll do a couple of spots and then call it a day. But Randy still gets to be on the show. And that's dope for Nick Aldis, because he gets a WrestleMania moment as a wrestler. You know what I mean? Because his entire career has been outside of WWE. So, you know, for him to essentially end his wrestling career at WrestleMania, that would be a fire way to, you know.
Really cool.
So I could definitely see that. But yeah, so another feud that people have been talking about, obviously Drew McIntyre versus Damian Priest. A lot of people were not hot on this feud when it started. How do people feel about it now? Steve, I want you to talk to this, just because I feel like your opinion of this kind of reflected what I saw a lot more online, you know, at least when it started. And I'm curious to know if your opinion on this has changed at all.
Yeah.
And why weren't you excited about it at first?
At first, I wasn't excited about it because I definitely have to acknowledge bias. I am a huge Drew McIntyre fan. And there's no doubt I think he was the superstar for WWE in 2024. He kind of carried a lot of the storylines at the top of the card, especially with Roman, you know, post-Mania kind of going by the wayside. You know, his feuds with Punk were absolutely excellent. And then obviously his title chase after getting cashed in on, with Priest, you know, and all of that kind of, you know, intertwined. So I was expecting, you know, going into, you know, this year that, you know, Drew would get a chance to maybe, you know, I thought he was going to probably be the opponent for Gunther at WrestleMania for the World Heavyweight Championship. And so when he got eliminated so quick, I initially was pretty upset about it. I kind of thought WWE was out of ideas with Drew, which, you know, in my opinions would be, you know, kind of unacceptable for a guy that I think is a stamped top 5 talent in the company right now, if not the wrestling business, for a character and a worker. But as I've gone on, you know, even at the beginning, I started talking myself into the feud, and Eric can probably attest to it, but I thought that the feud would have a chance to get over with fans, casual and, you know, big fans alike, because WWE's kind of giving Drew the mantle of, hey, you know, we know you're a top guy. You know, we just can't fit you in with one of the 2 titles right now. However, we really want you to get over this guy in Damian Priest, who, you know, we tried to have hold the gold for a couple months, and, you know, it didn't quite work out just because his character is not there. You know, we're trusting you to get, you know, to help get him over it and get heat on this program. And I told Eric, you know, and that's all. It's all going to depend on Priest, because we already know that Drew is going to talk his shit, work, and he'll get the program over himself. But it takes 2 to tango. And I got to admit, I'm pretty impressed by what Priest has been doing, especially with, you know, this past SmackDown, his little vignette talking. You know, they're giving us the reasons why we should be involved in this feud. And I think the main thing is, ever since WrestleMania last year, you know, long-term storytelling, Drew's been basically focused on everything but keeping his championship. You know, whether that's worrying too much about Punk when he was, you know, he had 2 or 3 times and opportunities to beat Damian Priest for the World Heavyweight Championship, and he let it go because he couldn't let go of a feud that had nothing to do with the title he was chasing. And then, you know, just kind of a blatant lack of respect and storyline for Priest, and that, you know, I know I'm better than you. I don't really have to worry about you. So I've really come around, you know, and I'm on the side of the fence of, I think this is going to be one of the best programs in the whole Mania card.
Yeah. That's I'm glad that you came around to it, because I went in sort of unsure of why everybody was so upset, I guess, because I was like, okay, I'm looking at it like Damian was the top guy basically on Raw all of last year, you know, until Gunther got the title. So, you know, because he was the world heavyweight champion, you know, for what?
He was world champ. Yeah.
5 months, 6 months, something like that. You know, he had a decent little reign.
4 or 5 months.
Yeah. Somewhere in there. So he had a decent little reign. I was like, okay, this is his first world title win. They gave him a 4 or 5 month reign. So they're treating him like he's a big deal. You know, he was basically the de facto leader of Judgment Day, him and Rhea, essentially. You know, which was the main stable on Raw at the time. So when everyone was complaining, I was just like, because the thing that I kept hearing was Drew should get more. And aside from a title shot, I was like, what does that mean? You know, because he's fighting another top guy. So I didn't understand where all the backlash was coming from. You kind of explained it a little bit. You're basically saying, no, he should have been in a title feud. That is what he should have been doing. So I'm like, okay, I can, you know, agree with that because he did have a hell of a year last year. You know, and he's been doing his thing just for years, really, with WWE with, you know, very little to no breaks. So I do feel like that should be rewarded, especially if you're, you know, over as he is, you know what I mean? He gets a reaction. He gets positive reactions no matter what he does. That's how you know somebody's like one of them ones. Like he can do piece of shit stuff and people are just like, yeah, we still love Drew. Doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So, Aaron, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I'm really excited about this feud because of the way that they've ramped it up. Okay. Oh, go, my bad. Go ahead, Steve.
Oh no, it was just kind of the feed was just kind of buffer. My bad, Eric. But I was just gonna add in really quick. I think to answer your, you know, what you were talking about, Shane. I think fans, you know, some fans, you know, including myself for a point, was a little down on it because even though, yeah, you could say, you know, Priest was world champ for 5 or 6 months last year, I wouldn't necessarily say that meant he was viewed as a top guy. Now they put the belt on him, which means that you know the creative, you know, believed in him. But I do think that a lot of fans weren't necessarily bought in. I think each time that you know he faced off against Drew, I think most of the fans were just more focused on what's going to happen with Drew and Punk, and they kind of forgot, oh shit, you know, Damian Priest, I guess, you know, just did retain. Like even when me and Eric were watching these things live, we were just talking about Drew and Punk, like what's going to happen here, and then we were like, oh wait, you know, Damian did win. And so like it wasn't necessarily like a doomsday kind of thing with Damian, but like I think more so recently his character's starting to come through because I don't necessarily think his Judgment Day iteration reflects how Damian kind of acts in real life. You could like I've kind of started to follow Damian on Instagram and I see how he talks, and he's a very, very normal, down-to-earth dude. He's a badass, but he's not this, you know, people called him Timu Undertaker. I think Drew did. And it was funny, but that's kind of why I don't fully put that on Priest because it's just not him. Like,
yeah,
the shit he was talking on Friday of like, you know, you keep overlooking me and like I'm gonna beat your ass. Like that's Damian Priest. Like just
and to your point, the same thing with when he was feuding with Gunther.
Yeah,
he was being more himself.
He was more him.
Yo, I'm from the streets. Like I had to, you know, grind out the gutter to get where I'm at.
Yeah.
I've earned this opportunity. Blah blah blah. You're privileged.
It was great.
That type shit. You know, if he leans more into that, which he did towards the end of last year and heading into this year, you know. So I guess that's where my issue was, is because I felt like he was getting the world title recognition after he won the world title or after he lost the world title. After he lost it is when people started looking at him like he is a main eventer. You know what I'm saying? And that kind of bled over into this year from last year, I feel like. Air, what do you think?
Me and Steve have a list, and I don't remember who all is on it right now because we haven't updated it in a while. But we have a list of people who they have gotten more over after holding a world title, and Damian was like either number 1 or number 2 on that list for a long time. But
yeah,
it's true though. Once he lost the world title, that's when he started his character started getting more over. And I think the other thing that also helped too was him moving over to SmackDown, because I think on Raw the focus was so much on the Netflix move and other people kind of reshuffling around the roster, especially kind of when WrestleMania season really started kicking up. Damian kind of needed to go to SmackDown because SmackDown didn't really have a lot of top guys, to Steve's point. And this feud, to me, is helping Damian get to that point now, because now he's like, we can put him in the conversations with the Drews, with the AJ Styles, is like the other people that are over there. Actually, I think AJ Styles is on Raw now, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, for sure.
I think Shane, like another thing, and I think we can even talk about this, is what's going on with Raw and SmackDown right now is kind of reminding me of like the 05, 06 era of WWE when, Raw was kind of just predominantly the biggest show on WWE at that point. And they wanted to start revitalizing SmackDown and getting real talent over there. And then so you started seeing they put The Undertaker over there. They put Kurt Angle over there. They put JBL became a huge, huge heel. Mark Henry, the great Khali. And like you started seeing, like, not only am I looking forward to Mondays, now I'm looking forward to Fridays too, because there's some, like, the WWE Championship's just as important in, their mid-card scene as Monday. And I think you're starting to see it with SmackDown. Me and Eric were kind of, at some points last year, a little concerned about, like, without Roman, what's SmackDown going to look like? And so now we're seeing Jacob Fatu, who I think there's a decent chance he could be competing for a world championship next year by this time. Drew, who's a top 5 dude, again, in my opinion, in WWE. You have, even though Punk and Rollins are on Raw, you have LA Knight. You have, obviously, I think, Cody's, I think, a SmackDown superstar.
Yep, Cody's still on SmackDown.
Now. And so you have him, and then, you have all these guys, Solo. All of these guys now, you're starting to see, like, SmackDown isn't quite, I think, where Raw is, just because with Raw, you have Punk, you have Rollins, you have, Gunther, you have all these guys. But with Priest coming over to SmackDown, he's one of, like, many real important pieces of making SmackDown like a huge appointment television.
Yeah. I also think it's the Netflix deal had a lot to do with it too. Like the fact that WWE was moving to Netflix, like they put so much focus into making sure that Raw was going to be like a banging product, that they probably let some of those resources that would otherwise have gone to SmackDown, they probably pulled them over to Raw to make sure that Raw is, like as far as the creative and stuff like that. Because there's clear differences in certain divisions, like just clear differences. Now that we've seen the mid-card women's titles for like a few months now, Steve, you're absolutely right. The way that they're booking the United States title is night and day completely different than how they're booking the Intercontinental title. Like Lyra is about to be in the tag team tournament gauntlet or whatever next week. Why? You're the Intercontinental sense. Like that's so dumb. Like,
meanwhile,
her whole thing is being the United States champion. Like they have made that
team.
She built a team around the fact that she's the champion. Like that instantly makes it a super huge deal. You know what I mean? So it's like, and then tag teams. Raw's tag division sucks. SmackDown's is great right now. You know what I mean? So it's like there's clear differences in certain aspects, and it's like, how is it so off balance? Like
it's always changing too, and that's a really good point you made, Shane. I think like what Raw's become now is, and again, things change, and Mania's on the horizon. I'm sure the picture will look a lot different on Raw once we see who wins the WWE Championship. But right now, Raw's kind of being carried by Cody, John Cena starting off the program, and then you have your feuds on Raw, like I'm trying to think of the Braun Breaker, the Judgment Day. You have Liv and Raquel. I think Liv's basically become one of like the Mount Rushmore like faces of Monday Night Raw at this point. I think she's kind of carrying the show, man or woman. But you notice that on SmackDown, everything seems like it's in line. It's not like being dependent on by like one opening segment. There's a ton of shit going on. Pardon my French, but they have the mid card. They have the tag teams, men's tag team. They have the individual women. You have Jade Cargill and Naomi competing every week on SmackDown. That's a hot feud. And then you obviously have Drew and Damian, which I would not consider mid card, but it's basically being put right in front of the main event. And then you have Roman, Seth, and Paul and Punk, finishing off SmackDown. I just think the balance right now is a lot heavier towards. I don't think it's by design, but I think it's SmackDown right now that's way more interesting to watch hour to hour, as opposed to just watching the beginning of Raw and saying, "Oh, that was great by Cena and Cody," and then it's a lot of filler besides basically Liv Morgan, in my opinion.
I think right now the reason why they feel so kind of different is because Raw to me feels like the story heavier show, and SmackDown feels like more of like if you want to get good story but like a lot more wrestling, go to SmackDown and watch that. Like that's kind of how it feels right now. It feels like on Raw they are overcompensating for a lot of the time by trying to fit a whole lot of story into a lot of stuff, and that's why we're getting a lot more promo time on Raw, a lot of in-ring talking segments. Like, yeah, we are still getting some wrestling happening, but on SmackDown, it's way more apparent that they're focusing on wrestling right now. So, I mean, that'll probably change when SmackDown goes back to 2 hours. That's
not historically been like that though, like because that's where the SmackDown 6 thing came from. It was because SmackDown was historically the wrestling heavier show, whereas Raw was historically more the like drama story driven show. So that doesn't, and especially with them moving to Netflix, that really makes sense because you got to think about the Netflix audience. They're not trying to get a wrestling audience, they're trying to get the Netflix audience to watch their product, which has wrestling in it. You know what I'm saying? So they're going to cater it more to what Netflix is, which is more storytelling, documentary style stuff. Like that's why they've changed a lot of their production, I think, as far as the look of it and how they do certain things. Cause it's almost like reality show style, like how they shoot a lot of their segments, like when they show the people coming in and, even following people from the back to the entrance and stuff. Like a lot of that is almost reality show style. Like, which right. Netflix has a lot of that, you know what I mean? So, even like their movies and documentaries and stuff, a lot of them are based in reality. So it's, so it makes sense, like from a business perspective, why they're doing it that way.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I am remiss, and I did miss out. I have to give props to Gunther and Jay and Jimmy now for what they're doing on Raw. That's become really, really good with some heat. And then, another thing that's actually probably my favorite part of Raw when they're on is this group of Penta, Kaiser, Rey Fenix is on SmackDown. We'll talk about him in a minute. But El Grande Americano, aka may or may not be Chad Gable, but like I think though that group of guys, I think Raw would be very smart to lean into that more because it's gone beyond how great their matches are, and it's become really good story with all those guys. There's heat. You have a real clear dichotomy between babyface and heel, and obviously the wrestling speaks for itself. So I'd really like to see them expand on the cruise. It's not a cruiserweight division, but whatever that next group is, it's become really, really entertaining on Raw.
Didn't you just say the other day that you think WWE should bring back a cruiserweight belt? Didn't you just?
I did.
The other day?
I did.
Oh yeah, you did. Yeah, that was you, Steve. Yeah, maybe y'all both did.
I said that I think they should, whenever their contract or whatever their deal with Twitter is up, I think they should turn the Speed Championships into like a light heavyweight championship.
Sure.
Something like
light
that.
Heavyweight is probably even better, Shane.
Or they could, and the reason I say light heavyweight is just because then you can have guys like Penta in there and stuff, and it doesn't limit it to small guys.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. So yeah, you can have your Pentas and your Gables and certain other guys like that, but it's still going to be that fast paced kind of that action that you're looking for in that division. So like I think they should bring that back because cruiserweight was always kind of a WCW thing, and then WWE just sort of adopted it, but they never really did it right. You know what I mean? Like they had a few good champions, but for the most part, that wasn't a division that you were like, really looking to see. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like how it was treated in WCW. It was like it was NWO stuff and the cruiserweight division. That's why you watch WCW.
Yeah,
you know,
it was
so
excellent. I think that was one of the biggest parts of WCW.
Yeah, or even in TNA, they called it was the X division, but same idea.
Sorry. Yeah,
you know, same idea. You know what I mean? It was the action. You know, you want to see some moves and some shit. All right, this is the division to watch. You know, so we'll save the predictions for WrestleMania till next week because we still got 2 weeks out, and you know we still have a little bit of storyline development. But I'm very happy that you brought up the Jimmy Uso, Jey Uso, Gunther segment though, because that definitely. I felt like that was very much needed where he just beat the shit out of Jimmy and, you know, like got some real emotion. And, you know, now it's beyond just, oh, the people are doubting me. You suck. You know what I'm saying? It's beyond that now. Now it's actually there's, like you said, there's heat in the story. So, Eric, I know me and you were watching that together, but what was going through your mind when you know, when you finally saw, or not finally, but you know, when I said, "Oh, finally, they're doing something," like, hey, you know, what were you thinking?
We had just talked about this like earlier on in the show, and I know me and Steve have been having conversations about this too. But the Gunther and Jey build so far had felt very, very safe and repetitive. Like you said, Shane, it was the doubting myself thing, and you suck, I'm gonna choke you out every week. And it was like, okay, this is getting old. Like we need something else to kick this into a new gear. Otherwise, like we're not gonna care as much now if Jey ends up winning. So now that this happened, it's like, oh, okay, there's real emotion here. There's real stakes. Like if I were Jimmy, or if I were them, I would lean on the Jimmy is out of WrestleMania altogether type thing. Like do something like that. Like. Because now, like we can kind of see that emotional side of Jey. I think when Jey digs into his emotional bag, I think that's when we get the best version of him that comes out character-wise. So I think for them to continue on this path, they just need to stay on that side of the story, and I think it can really work out well for them in the end. What happened?
All right.
my bad. Shane, you say something?
Oh, okay. No, you good.
No, I was reading something. So and then.
Oh, okay.
So okay. So yeah. Jade and Naomi. That's been going on. You know, I like the fact that again, when Naomi laid out all of her reasons, I was like, yep, it's everything I said it would be. You know what I'm saying? Like to a T almost. And it makes sense. So it's a good reason to have a rivalry. You know what I mean? Like sometimes going with the obvious booking decision is the best booking decision. So they're going one-on-one at Mania. That's going to be interesting. I assume Jade wins because it's going to be, her first singles Mania moment. I'm curious to see how they build from here to get to her versus Bianca, which of course they're trying to get to. So let's do some fantasy booking. Steve, how do we get there? How do we, after Mania, assuming Jade wins, how do we get to her versus Bianca?
Okay, and so we have another huge domino that we don't know how it will fall, and that's obviously we covered the assumption that Jade will win, and I do think Jade will beat Naomi. It's going to be I think it's going to be a great match, and Naomi's going to be a perfect foil for Jade. But then the other domino that has to fall is what's going to happen in the world women's. I think it's the world title. I don't know if it's the WWE.
Yeah, it's the world title. Okay,
so the world title for the women. Who wins that triple threat match? I think Eric and I are differentiate in our opinion. I do think Bianca is going to win. She has a really good WrestleMania record. I'm not sure if she's lost at WrestleMania, actually.
She has.
But, okay, so I do think she's going to win, and I think ultimately it's going to lead, not immediately, but I think it's going to lead to Bianca turning heel even before Jade crosses paths with her. And turning on the fans. And I think that's kind of been brewing very subtly, but surely for a couple months now. And I think it culminates at SummerSlam. And I think there's a decent chance that if Jade stays healthy, if Jade keeps working at her craft, everything else takes care of itself. She's an absolute star. I think Jade's going to go over and become women's world champion at SummerSlam over Bianca.
Woo! That's a bold stance. I like it though. I like that.
Okay. Yeah, Eric, how do we get there?
So Steve is right. A lot of this because I also think Jade is going to win at Mania. A lot of this stems on what happens with that triple threat match. Now, I think one of two things is going to happen. I do think Bianca is going to win. But I think if she wins, I don't necessarily think that heel turn happens immediately. Or if it does happen, it'll happen to where Bianca will like cheat to win in the match somehow. And that's basically how we get her heel turn. But I think if she loses, that's when we'll get the heel turn. And then that's when you can set up the storyline between Jade and Bianca. Because I do think that now that we kind of know what the storyline is, like how it's been laid out, I do think that it's basically going to eventually come down to a Naomi and or Jade is going to make Bianca choose between the two. And that's how we end up getting to Bianca versus Jade, because I do think Bianca will ultimately side with Naomi. And then that's how we get that match.
Okay.
I like that.
Well, yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. I like both of those. We'll definitely see. But yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that they're building that way. So
Should we talk about Cena? Should we talk about Cena and Cody?
Yeah, I think they're building a faction on the low still. And I think Drew might be a part of it.
I do. I think he is. I think Seth Rollins may be part of it too.
I agree.
Yep.
And if KO wasn't hurt, he would also be a part of it.
Yes, 100%.
It's going to be interesting though. Because Shane, Eric and I talked about this, and how are they going to book the 4 WWE / world title matches for WWE, for men and women, and obviously I think it's fair to assume that there's not going to be title changes on all 4. I think max maybe 3 of those 4. Max will change hands, and so it's kind of figuring out who do we think is going to win between Cody and Cena, because I've told Eric this, and we kind of disagree fundamentally on a couple of the reasons why, but I am of the opinion that John Cena, if he stays true to his word, which I have no reason to doubt that he'd be lying about this, being 2025, being his last year competing in WWE, I don't think there's a shadow of a doubt that the year is going to end with John Cena as a babyface. And so I think the question becomes, even though it's WrestleMania, and I know that everyone thinks that every single title change always happening will be as popular as he's been. And my answer, and it's why I'm going to predict Cody to retain, is I think that it would make more sense to me if Cena goes through the struggle of losing to Cody and kind of losing his mind and crashing out in the process, and slowly realizing that his whole success, beyond his hard work and being an absolute beast, was built on the back of his fan support and it being gradual and natural and genuine. And I think that sometime around the summer, mid-late summer before SummerSlam, I think he's going to turn back face. And I wouldn't be surprised if he wins his 17th around SummerSlam, if not maybe a little bit later. But I think it's going to be around there as a babyface.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Cena's going to do it.
Yeah,
I understand. I think Cena's going to do it only because Triple H seems to like breaking records. He seems to be into that. So
yeah,
You know, he did it with the IC title. He did it with the Universal title specifically, you know, and then he got Roman in the top 3 world title runs total.
For days, yeah.
So, you know, it seems like he likes doing that. So I could imagine him giving Cena number 17 just so that he can kind of be like, I was the one that booked history. You know what I mean? Like, he seems
well, we know 17's going to come.
Thing.
Yeah, we know 17's going to come, Shane, but are we sure, like, it has to happen at Mania?
No. I don't. The reason I think it might happen at Mania is, well, for one, the spectacle of it, just because, again, Triple H, just judging by the last like couple of years of his booking, he doesn't really do major title changes outside of WrestleMania. Like,
agreed.
They pretty much always happen at Mania. So if it's gonna happen, it's probably gonna happen at Mania. So that's one reason. 2, I don't think you want to chance like how long you actually have Cena for, unless he's under like a legitimate talent WWE contract right now, which says like this has to be the priority. Like, then I don't know how long you want to chance him having your title if he all of a sudden has to go to Hollywood or something like that. You know what I mean? And now he's gone for 3 months shooting a movie and you don't have a champion. Yeah. So it's like, unless they're planning on building that into the story, which they could do, which would make sense. They could do almost like a reverse Brock Lesnar thing where the audience was complaining about Brock, you know, not defending the title enough. Like, they could do that on purpose with Cena and have him lean into it, you know, and do the Hollywood thing or whatever. Like, that could work. But, you know, and he's older, so you don't want to risk injury. Like, there's just a lot of risk factor, I feel like, if you don't pull the trigger now. That's all. So, I feel like as good as Triple H's booking is, it is safe. Like, he usually goes with the most obvious thing that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So that's the only reason I say that. Like, if I just, you know, if I had to put money on it, I'm going Cena, you know.
I get it. Yeah.
I don't really have much to add there. I agree. Just because, like you said, Shane, I think with all those risks weighing out, I think pulling the trigger now is probably what they would lean into, especially because the other thing is you don't want to have Cody lose or win the belt and retain now and then have the slight rumored online backlash actually kind of transfer into real life, because I do think you also do risk that if you have Cody just go over with a brand new heel turn John Cena, because people were waiting on the heel turn for so long. So yeah, that's another reason right there. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. All right. Well, tonight is AEW Dynasty, and we got that card coming up. So we will take a quick break, and then we will come back with me and Eric's predictions for AEW Dynasty. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back, and we have the card right here. We're going to start from the bottom and go up, because that is, in all likelihood, the order of the show. So we're going to start with the 0 hour. We're going to get this ad out of the way first, though. We're going to start with the 0 hour, which first match, Nick Wayne and crew, which is Action Andretti and Leo Rush versus AR Fox and Top Flight. Eric, who you got and why?
Nick Wayne and the new YNs.
Right, the YNs.
Yeah, the new YNs. Yeah, they just linked up, so yeah, they're gonna win. Easy answer right there.
I agree. I totally agree. I don't even have nothing to add. Yeah. Next is the Open Challenge. Platinum Max Caster, the best wrestler alive. Let's go, Max. You're the best wrestler alive. Versus to be determined who is going to be his Open Challenge contestant.
I have no fucking idea, to be honest.
You have no idea.
I have maybe idea. Actually no. Maybe this time it's Anthony Bowens. Yeah, maybe this time it's Anthony Bowens since it's on paper.
I think it's going to be, exactly. I think it's going to be Bowens, and Bowens is going to win because that's the gimmick. Max is the best wrestler alive who cannot get a W.
Yeah, and then they're going to kind of restart up the Acclaimed story. It kind of feels like, they gotta.
Yeah. All right, man. So then we got the men's Owen Hart Cup tournament match, round 1. We have Kyle Fletcher versus Mark Briscoe. I got Kyle Fletcher.
Yeah, I got Kyle Fletcher as well. I love Mark Briscoe, but it seems like they don't. It seems like he's a really great utility worker right now.
Yeah,
like it doesn't feel like they're pushing him very, very hard. So I agree. I'm going with Kyle.
They're super pushing Kyle, and Mark is a utility player, exactly like you said. So for sure, Kyle's getting the dub. And then also because Will Ospreay is facing off against Kevin Knight later. And so in the semis, of course, they're gonna do Will Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher. So the women's Owen Hart Cup tournament match, we have Mercedes Moné versus Julia Hart. Who do you got winning and why?
Mercedes.
Yeah.
For the simple fact that they're going to set up that semifinal match with her versus Athena.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Next match, Will Ospreay, Kevin Knight. Like we already said, Will Ospreay. Kevin Knight's going to have another great performance because they seem to be pushing him. They signed him really quickly after his debut match. He got, he's getting really good reactions.
His theme song is fucking fire.
His theme song is amazing. I highly recommend everybody go download it. It is called, actually, here, I'll pull it up because I just put it on my playlist recently. It's that art. It is called The Jet, and it's by Mont Easy. So, yeah, I highly recommend that one. That shit is fire. Good call out here.
That song.
But yeah, you're losing though, Kevin Knight. Will Ospreay's got that. So next we have the Ring of Honor World Championship mask versus title match. We have Bandito, the masked luchador, coming in. Chris Jericho done stole his brother's mask. He got it back. He's tried to take Bandito's mask multiple times. Hasn't worked. Jericho coming in as the Ring of Honor World Champion. If he wins, Bandito has to take off his mask. If Bandito wins, Jericho loses his title. Who is winning the match and why?
Bandito, easy call. They're not gonna have him demask.
I agree. Yeah. That is the only one that I feel like is like straightforward, predictable like that, though. I feel like everything else, well, except for all the other matches that everything up until this point has been pretty predictable. This is where we get into the slightly iffy territory. But still, I feel pretty confident in my predictions. But the next match we have is the AEW TNT Championship, no time limit, no outside interference match of Daniel Garcia versus Adam Cole. I have Adam Cole winning. My reasons are, I think Adam Cole, they've treated him like a top guy his whole time in the company. I don't think he hasn't. He's been a tag champion, but he has not had singles gold yet. And I think they're looking to revitalize the TNT Championship. And in order to do that, sometimes you have to put the belt on somebody important that can make it feel more important. Not to say that Daniel Garcia is not important. It's just that he's very young still. And Adam Cole, has, as he said the other day, 17 years in the game. He's a bigger name, kind of, deserves some gold, in my opinion, and he's been kind of hampered because of injuries and things like that. So now that he's healthy, he's packed on a little muscle, it seems like it's his time. So I'm going Adam Cole.
I am also going Adam Cole, and I don't have any other reasons to give. You pretty much laid them all out right there.
All right. Next up, we got the AEW World Tag Team Championship of the Hurt Syndicate versus Big Bill and Brian Keith. I think we both have the Hurt Syndicate winning. Do we have the same how they win?
Yeah, yes. Hurt Syndicate win. And MJF will. I don't think he's gonna cause like a blatant physical distraction or anything, but I think he will do something to help Hurt Syndicate win.
Yes, I agree. I don't know if it's gonna be super blatant, but I think it'll be enough to further the story. I'll put it that way.
Yep.
It'll be enough to maybe make Bobby go, okay, maybe, but still not yes. You know, but enough to make him go, okay, that's good. Maybe one of those type of things. And then also, I think it furthers the Big Bill, Brian Keith, Jericho story, where Jericho keeps berating them on TV every week, saying that they're not learning. They've been around the learning tree all this time and they're not picking up and all this stuff. So they could turn around and be like, well, they had outside interference and you weren't out there for our match. So, if you was out there to help us, then we probably would have won, actually. So this is really your fault. And then, they go into the Jericho versus Big Bill and Brian Keith story.
Yep.
So I think if you have MJF assist Hurt Syndicate, it actually furthers all those stories at the same time.
Agreed.
So I think that's sort of the most obvious way to go.
Yeah, I agree.
Next, we have the AEW World Trio. This is where we start getting iffy, in my opinion. AEW World Trios Championship match. We have the Death Riders of Claudio Castagnoli, Pac, and Wheeler fucking Yuta. Shout out to the homegirl Bex over at Don't Call Me Diva podcast. Versus Rated FTR, which is Adam Copeland, Dax Harwood, Cash Wheeler. Who and why?
Death Riders. I have them for a few reasons. Number one, because I think another person in that group is losing. So I think having one of them win will kind of leave that later match a little more unpredictable. I'll get to that in a minute. The other reason is simply because of the tension between FTR and Edge. I think that the story there is kind of obvious, but not really right on its face. But if you're paying attention to kind of how wrestling is booked and how certain teams have broken up and how they've turned on one another in the past, then you can kind of read between the lines and see where this one is going. But it definitely feels like we're about to get a heel FTR versus a babyface Adam Copeland and a partner that is not quite a babyface yet, but is hopefully going to be turning babyface soon. And that would be Christian. It feels like another story is going on with him that is possibly going to have him separate from Nick Wayne and company. So I think the best way for him to do that is to kind of realign himself back with Edge. So I think that's kind of how they get there. And I think a heel FTR going up against them just makes the most sense in the world. So yeah, those are my reasons.
Yep, totally agree. And I think it's going to be like slightly swervy where FTR, because everybody, they're sort of painting it right now where it seems like it seems like Dax might turn on both of them. Like he might turn on Cash and Cope.
Right.
But I don't think it's going to go that way. I think Cash will ultimately side with Dax and they will both turn on Copeland. That's what I think will happen.
Agreed.
Now, I don't know if that happens like after they lose to the Death Riders, like which probably that makes sense, which would lead more into your theory as far as into the, the main event match too. So yeah, I think that actually, I think you convinced me. Now that I think about it, because that for a little bit I was thinking maybe Rated FTR were going to win them just because they're looking to revitalize those belts. But from a storytelling aspect, I think what you said makes more sense. So yeah, I think you've convinced me. Yeah. I think Death Riders are going to retain. The next one is the AEW Women's World Championship. Toni Storm versus Megan Bayne. I think if I'm using logic, I go Tony Storm. But I think the way they've been booking Megan Bayne and the way that the internet has been reacting to Megan Bayne, I think they might pull the trigger and just do a for what they've been calling a Brock Lesnar run, or what I'll call a Kurt Angle run also. Like, he was the WWE champion within a year. You know what I mean? Brock was WWE champion within a year. They might do it with Megan, because if they have somebody that they like, Megan would be kind of the caliber of wrestler that could pull something like that off, coming in so new, just sort of a silent assassin type. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying I'd put money on it, but I would not be shocked if Megan pulls it out. So again, logic only, I'm going Tony Storm, but there might be an upset in the works here. What do you think?
I think the possibility of Megan winning it in the future is extremely high. And when I mean in the future, I mean even possibly still this year. I really do believe that. I don't think it's happening tonight, though. Here's why. Number one, I still think Tony Storm is Shane, camera's on you.
Oh shit.
All right. Number one, I think Tony Storm, as of right now, is probably the most over person in AEW. Like, just period. Like, man or woman. And with that, I think they're not really going to want to burn out of that overness just yet, because she is a big reason why they still move as many numbers as they do. Because a lot of people really fuck with the new timeless Tony Storm character. So I think they're going to keep that belt on her for as long as humanly possible until a really good story comes out in a convincing way, kind of like Mariah May, to where they can beat her. Because my only issue with Megan winning so quickly is not even really her necessarily, because she came in and, just like you said, Shane, she's been killing it ever since she came in. And I wouldn't be surprised if she goes on a Kurt Angle or Brock Lesnar type run. My only issue is, and I mean, they kind of have played it into the story a little bit, so I will kind of give a slight kudos to him for it, but she has not said a single word. And that might be on purpose, but I kind of do need her to talk a little bit so that I can figure out, like, what her character is besides just, I'm really big, strong woman, and I'm bigger and stronger than everybody else. Need just a little bit more than that.
But do you though? Like, sometimes I think that is all you need. Like, because, you know, like, again, like a Brock, or like, we can go really old school, like an Andre the Giant never talked. You know what I'm saying? He just went out there, was a big, huge monster, and everybody loved him because he was a big, huge monster that, you know, would destroy people. Brock, kind of the same thing at the beginning of his career. He didn't really start talk. When he did talk, people didn't like it. And then when he did talk and people did like it, was way later in the second half of his career. Like, he didn't get comfortable on the mic until he was like doing the silly stuff with Sammy. The whole rest of his career was basically just big, scary monster, and it worked. So I do think you can book people that way, and it works like that. Luchasaurus is another good example. People love Luchasaurus, just big, scary monster. Kane, big, scary monster. That's it. That was you know what I mean? So I do think you can do that. And there is a way to do that. I do think there's a shelf life on it. I do think at some point you do have to add layers to it. You know what I mean? Like they did with Andre by putting him with Bobby Heenan and making him turn heel. And you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, they did certain stuff, you know, to elevate the character. But I do think starting off, you can just simply be I'm just dominant. I'm an ass kicker. That's it. That's what I am. Eventually you do have to build on that though. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Let's see. The next one is the triple threat match for the international championship between Kenny Omega, Speedball Mike Bailey, and my homeboy Ricochet. Who you got and why?
Out of this final crop of the ones that you said were a little less unpredictable, this is the most predictable final match before the main event. To me, Kenny Omega's winning. No possible way he's losing tonight for a few reasons. Number one, he just won it. Number two, if you're just looking at wrestling logic and wrestling booking, they're clearly positioning him to merge that belt with the Continental belt that Kazuchika Okada has. Like, that's clearly where they're going. So they're not going to take that belt off Kenny right now to have somebody else merge it, because they want that match to be Kenny versus Okada to merge those belts. So I think this match is going to be sick. Don't get me wrong. It's probably going to be the best in-ring match of the night, maybe besides Will and Kevin Knight. But yeah, no way Kenny's losing this one.
I tend to agree with you because he just got it. However, if Ricochet somehow won, I also wouldn't be surprised. Only because it is a triple threat, so that sort of allows for Kenny to not get pinned and lose the belt. And Ricochet, he's on fire right now. Like, his character is so good. So I could just, I don't think he's going to. I think Kenny is going to retain, mostly because he just won it and he just came back. And, you know, let's be real, the belt looks good on the boy. You know what I'm saying? Like, he looks like that belt was made for him. So, you know, I don't see him losing. But if Ricochet won, I wouldn't be entirely shocked. I'll put it that way.
I won't be surprised if Ricochet is the one to beat him down the line after they do merge the belts together. I can see that for sure.
Yeah. Plus, they're doing Okada versus Kenny, so yeah. Like,
they're going to do that at All In for sure.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Yeah.
All right. Last match on the card, the AEW World Championship. We have Jon Moxley versus Swerve Strickland.
I'm going to pick Swerve. I'm going to do it. I'm going to pick Swerve. This one is the most unpredictable one for me. I feel like a few things happened this week to make me really change my mind on why I think Swerve is going to win. First reason is because of the angle they're starting to cook up with Hangman Adam Page. It feels like Hangman is turning babyface if he hasn't already fully. So I feel like we're already kind of going there. And I think in order to completely solidify that, this is how I think the match is going to go and why I think Swerve is going to win. Because I think Hangman is going to help him, ultimately. I think somehow he's going to help him either fight off the rest of the Death Riders, whatever the case may be. But somehow, some way, I do believe that Hangman is going to be the one to help Swerve win, and it's going to be a shock to everybody because of, you know, just their history and everything. But based on that one little interaction, it was quick and it was very brief, but it said a lot. And I really do think that Hangman is going to view Moxley and the Death Riders keeping the belt hostage as a bigger problem than Swerve getting the belt back, especially after he just quote-unquote forgave him. So, yeah, that's ultimately what I think is going to happen. I think Hangman is going to be the one to help, and Swerve will win the title tonight.
Yep. That's my prediction, too. I don't have nothing else to add to that. That's my prediction, too.
Yep.
All right, y'all. Well, you let us know what you think is going to happen tonight. We're out of here. You know, we are going to get ready to watch the show. 0 Hour starts in 15 minutes. So until next time, this is Shane. That is Eric. Steve was with us earlier, and he'll be back next week. And this is Shoot Style Sessions right here on the Ethos Media Network. Please make sure you like, you share, and you subscribe for all the latest content. We'll